Hello, 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 hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
Dirt Son of Earth here with the acid left, and I am talking with Theory Plebe and Anne of NSP, or New Symbolization Project. Anne will be with us in just a moment, seeing how everyone's doing. We're going to just catch up, kind of talk. We met a few years ago, talk about that kind of stuff, talk about the publishing that's going on, and kind of shoot the shit, really. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing all right. I'm trying to decide if it's just a slightly too cold or if I just need to jump around some more and get my blood moving out here.
I mean, I think that you talking while on the vertical video phone, walking around, has a really nice psychedelic feel to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what's going on in the background. Is he being chased? Is he on a hike?
Yes.
Is it just calisthenics? Who knows?
Well, let me give you a quick little tour here. This is the car I'm driving. It's a Honda Civ, I think Accord.
Damn.
This is my tiny house thing. Did you ever see it in real life?
I did see it, but I didn't go inside it. We were on a strict time schedule. We walked by it.
I think we were in a hurry, and then that was like right before my cat Russell got hit by a car because he was trying to find us after we had gone by there.
Yeah.
That was a really bad day.
Yeah, that's not good. Oh.
Yeah. It was in a different location at the time. This thing has moved a few times in the last few years, but yeah. And then this is a farm that I now live on by the Idaho-Oregon border, and I'm gonna do a little sort of, I guess, teaser announcement. But first of all, let's welcome Anne, who's now on the stream.
I'm back. I'm listening to everything you said.
Do you know what the little teaser announcement was going to be, Anne?
Maybe.
Yeah. So the people whose property it is that I am currently on are funding the building of a studio space that I'll be able to use for a couple of years before they eventually convert it into a shop. And so basically they're going to supply me with the materials, and then Anne and I and my dad probably will travel down here, and I don't know who else, but it'll be built over the next, I don't know, sometime in the next month and a half it will be built. And but that's going to be during a live stream marathon for hashtag Free Mikey, which we can get into here in a second. But the thing I'll say about the marathon is, like, it's going to be fun because half the time I'll be on Minecraft running around building things and surviving. The other half the time I'll be running around actually building a building on real life property, and I'll be using a GoPro. And somebody just sent me the GoPro in the mail. I got it today.
You just got it?
Oh, that'll be fun. Are you going to be building in Minecraft the same property you're building in real life? Are they going to be like, yeah, excellent.
Yes.
Yeah, I am going to.
Oh, that's good content.
Yeah.
I should get a GoPro for art stuff. I've been thinking that for a little bit. Watching GoPro stuff honestly always makes me a little motion sick. But I still think it's awesome. I know for the majority of people it doesn't do that. I seem to be really sensitive to that. Like with any VR stuff, I've always had VR sickness afterwards. This strange feeling of being out of my body, out of place, like as if the real world itself was virtually constructed, and I don't like that. It's an uneasy feeling.
So that's not normal to feel that way. Okay.
I smashed the TV once during VR, so I'm like, maybe not for me.
Wow.
I mean, I think the TV was fine, but I was really into the game, and it's so realistic that you like forget that you're in a confined space, that there's like furniture you can run into, and so I was like going like that and just whacked the TV down.
I think you whacked the TV like 3 times.
don't
Total.
expose me like that.
You know, it was probably up to something. I wouldn't put it past it. Like, there's a video drum situation going on where it was gonna get inside you. So you did the right thing, Anne.
Good.
It looks like I got Michael Downs in the call with us.
What?
Oh,
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Should I bring him in?
No.
I don't recommend bringing Mikey into calls ever, you know. But I'm just kidding. Yeah, 100% we should bring him in.
I think so too. Hello, Michael.
Looks like he's muted.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah. There's a mix-up. Didn't think I could be here, and then I was able to. So sorry I'm
Yay.
late.
Oh, it was like being edged. I really enjoyed it. You know, I thought you were coming, and then I thought you weren't, and then you just showed up, and it's like, you know, I'm pretty happy about it. How are you doing
Thanks for
today?
having. Oh, I'm okay. I just got off work and scrambling around and got my times mixed up.
Oh yeah. Today is my off day, luckily, but I was telling Ann earlier I'm now working night shifts where I used to work morning shifts, and it's throwing my body for a loop. I'm liking the work a lot more, but it's difficult to go to bed for me at 3 a.m., 4 a.m.
Oh.
Yeah, my body. Well, I crave more sleep afterwards, but then I sleep my mornings away when I feel productive. But I think I'll adjust.
Yeah.
See, I'm a night owl, and this job I'm working, I have to get up at 5 a.m. for, and it as a night owl, it kills me.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, well, you know, I think different times in my life I've gone through different phases. So I don't know. I don't know if anyone's naturally like that. You know, your body has these chemical rhythms that it builds up, but hopefully you adjust as well. I don't know how long you've been doing this particular morning job.
Yeah, I've been doing it about 1.5 years, and I mean, I've kind of adjusted, but not really. I don't think I'll ever adjust to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that sounds like we need to free Mikey then.
Absolutely.
Like for me, I just want to be able to primarily go back to focusing on research and writing, and you know, that's kind of the main goal here.
Yeah.
I've had a few people message me in the last week saying, "Is Michael in jail?"
Yes.
In
The jail of
Capitalism jail.
wage labor.
Yeah, I'm like, what do you guys not understand about wage labor?
Yeah. It's
Exactly.
No, and I mean, you see this, like, I mean, the anti-work movement seems to be picking up a lot of steam right now. And I just know that everybody I work with, even the ones with the really, like, old school work ethics, they're so burnt out. They're so exhausted. And it's a combination of working more and more, harder and harder, not making any more money. And there's just a level of economic exhaustion, existential exhaustion, and it's difficult to work with them every day, and they stay committed to this hard work, Protestant work ethic, and yet at the same time none of them can get ahead. Things get harder and harder, inflation, etc. And so it's like you try to connect the dots for them, but you can only go so far with the particular signifiers you use. You start bringing in socialism or communism or anything like that, they're not going for it. So that's what part of what I've had to do is learn to be rhetorically strategic in how I talk to them about this stuff.
Yeah. That's really difficult and worthwhile, obviously, but it is difficult to talk to people about those ideas which you feel they clearly have a connection to, like because of their work, the conditions around them, but have that ingrained distaste for the words that we classically use to do that. You know, like the Red Scare has lived on for a very long time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about hauntology. I mean, of course, there's the more specific definitions of that, but we are all haunted by McCarthy, right? Like, he continues to haunt America, and it's like people don't even know his name half the time or whatever, but they still think through him, and he's like a ghost that we need to exercise.
Oh yeah. I when I'm in the car, sometimes I listen to music, but I usually listen to conservative talk radio in the car. And listening to these people, it is the same stuff from the McCarthy era, just with current events attached to it. Like and I sincerely think some of these people believe that Nancy Pelosi is a diehard, communist secret
Seriously.
Soviet agent. Like, it's
Or Obama
amazing.
was.
Yeah.
Oh, Obama completely.
Yeah.
It is really amazing to think that's how far that anti-communist rhetoric has gone about, because it's steeped into where milquetoast neoliberals are considered far, far, far left.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Just living in a red state with a Bernie Sanders bumper sticker on my car. I have had my car spat on. I have had people flip me off. I know it's not for my driving because I drive like a very safe grandmother. So I know it was for the sticker. Like, and it's just absolutely crazy to me that, like, my sticker that says, like, whatever his saying was, like, for
Not
all
me,
of
us.
us. Oh, yeah, no, yeah, not me, us. Oh, bad, raging communist. Ah.
Yeah. Well, left online left memosphere stuff hasn't helped that, where we the meme of communism being not I but ours, like I'm trying to think of the example. Anytime you see the word me, you replace it with R, and like that's the joke, and then you put a Soviet flag on it or something.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
meaningful. But anyways, I wanted to get into talking with Michael a little bit about his stuff and about why we're having him on, and his blog, The Dangerous Maybe, which I think is a wonderful blog. I don't know of a clear explanation of Lacan, honestly. I've been reading Zizek for a very long time. I read a lot of his books from front to cover, and I always felt, when I tried to engage Lacan directly, pretty mystified by it. But reading Michael's stuff over the last year or so, I find extremely helpful. And I don't mean this to be like a crazy statement, but honestly more helpful than Zizek a lot of the times, which I feel like people push him as, oh, he makes Lacan easy. Well, he does, but he also complicates it by, 1,000 tangents and
Yes,
other
absolutely.
By being
complications.
Zizek.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, it means so much, and that's always been the approach. I mean, I guess for context, I'm not an academic. I have a GED. That's as far as my education really went, as far as institutional education. And I mean, I took courses at the New Center for Research and Practice, and I did take some courses at community college, and met an incredible philosophy teacher named Doug Washer, who really changed my life. But besides that, like, I never got a AA or a bachelor's, master's, PhD. And so for me, the principle I've always had is, like, if I can't explain whatever I'm reading to my friends I grew up with, while we're having drinks at the bar or whatever, then I don't know it. And that's always kind of been my guiding principle for doing exegesis or just teaching or just explaining a basic concept. And so that's what I try to bring to the blog, is trying to unpack some of the most difficult philosophers. And that's what I want to get back to. I mean, as far as just the scholarly type of work I do, um, I want to do work on Hegel, where I do like line by line commentaries on some of the really difficult parts in Hegel's text, Phenomenology of Spirit, Science of Logic. I want to do more stuff with Deleuze, and of course, much more with Lacan and Zizek and Baudrillard. And so that's kind of the goal with that. But yeah, like, I mean, that's kind of, I just have always felt like if I can't explain these concepts to my friends in a way that's straightforward and comprehensible, then I myself don't know them.
What about it? What about those thinkers that you listed there? What connects them to you? Because I noticed like central themes, I think, in what you usually write about. But I'm curious if that's what you're gonna say here. Like between Lacan, Zizek, Marx, Baudrillard, like what is it that you're finding in these thinkers? Obviously, you didn't have to study them for any reason. You were drawn to them and picked them. Like, what is that you want to explore in The Dangerous Maybe and in your future books?
So I'm definitely focused on consumerism. That's kind of the key thing that I'm focused on right now. But of course, the critique of capitalism. I think I obviously, like a lot of people, got more into anti-capitalism with the Great Recession. I was into it before that, but when you know when your economic situation breaks down because of structural failures, you get more into it. You get opened up to the critique of capitalism, and so I think for each one of those thinkers, like for Baudrillard, he's one of my favorites, and it's everyone talks about it like this, but I think he really was a prophet. I mean, there's passages where he talks about like we're gonna live in screen world and everything's gonna be geared around screens and all of this, and he was saying this back in the 70s, where okay, people might have one TV in their house, but he saw this tendency for screens to take over our lives, and so I really feel like if anybody can claim to be like a modern prophet, it was him. And I think he still has so much to tell us. Like, I feel like what he was trying to describe really only came to fruition after he died. So it's like right now the world's kind of catching up to where what he thought we would end up being as a world. And so I just think there's limitless potential in Baudrillard, and people talk about Baudrillard all the time, and you'll hear people talk about simulation and his various concepts, but nobody's really trying to take his work forward. He even said somewhere that he never had any students or followers. Like everybody, Foucault had followers, Lacan had followers, Sartre had followers. He never really developed a following in French academia. And so in some ways, I feel like that's what I'm trying to do with my work. And the majority of what I've written on Baudrillard is either going in my book or I just haven't put it on the blog. And so he's not as big a presence on the blog as he will be at some point, because he really is one of my favorite thinkers. But yeah, the blog, there's stuff on Deleuze and Guattari, and I have mixed feelings towards them because, I'm a Lacanian Zizekian, but they wrote the two coolest theory books ever. I think it's hard to deny how incredibly original and cool, I know it's funny to call it that, but Anti-Oedipus and A Thousand Plateaus really are. I just have disagreements with them on how they theorize desire, but ultimately I think Deleuze was the greatest metaphysician of the 20th century, and difference in repetition is utterly profound. But Yeah, I think for the reason I'm so drawn to Zizek and Lacan, though, is that I think they really are tapped into how human beings desire. I think there's really no understanding human behavior without the concept of the death drive, especially the way that Lacan and Zizek conceptualize it. And so Todd McGowan, for example, in his book Capitalism and Desire, I feel like that book is a modern classic because even though Zizek's always doing an Lacanian analyses of capitalism, if you stop and think, you go, well, what's Zizek's great book on, like the psychoanalysis of capitalism? It's all of his books and none of his books. It's all over them, right? So there's parts in them where he does it, but what Todd was able to do is he stays so focused on how capitalism and desire and enjoyment. I mean, you could also call the book Capitalism and Jouissance, but that to me is what is so great about what he did in that book. Because, I mean, for me, when I say Lacanian theory, I'll just be honest. Like Lacanian theory to me is Lacan, Zizek, and McGowan. And because I've learned so much, Tom McGowan's podcast he does with Ryan Ingley, Why Theory, that was really like an education for me. Like I've listened to every episode, many of them multiple times. To me, that's where Lacanian theory and Zizekian theory truly, truly clicked. And so I am fundamentally indebted to the work Todd and Ryan have done on that podcast. I mean, I can't begin to say how many lights they turned on for me.
Yeah. That's what I think about when I think about your writings, is that focus on desire as well. You're kind of picking up those threads. So, and extremely clear. I've never actually read any of McGowan's stuff, but I do listen to that podcast, and it is quite good.
Well, I'll tell you. So he's writing books. We're at a point with him where he's not appreciated like he's gonna be, and so like I feel lucky to be ahead of the curve on this one. And part of the issue with Todd's work, he is so crystal clear that I think that's maybe the only issue, is that there's no like seductive allure, because you get it so straightforwardly that that's the part of the seduction of these thinkers, is that it takes so much work to unpack what they're doing.
Yes.
And with Todd, there is just none. And I mean, I say this with respect because I love all these thinkers. There's none of that German French bullshit. He's the most straightforward, like American theorist, where it's like, I'm gonna tell you exactly what I'm saying without any terminology or anything getting in the way. And I honestly think because it's so clear, people can maybe pass it over, but he's on the same level. It's just as profound as anything you're going to get from any other like Lacanian theorist of ideology, or it's just so crystal clear. People are like, well, and it's weird. Like Freud suffered the same thing, where Freud ended up being greatly misunderstood because he did write clearly, but because people would read it so fast, they go, "Oh, I got it." Right. And they didn't really get it. And so that's part of the problem. If you write really clear, people read it really fast and they think they have understood you, and that they don't need to return to the text and work at it like they would work at being in time or phenomenology of perception or totality and infinity, right?
Right.
If you're gonna
even though something's clear, you still have to wrestle with it to get its
absolutely
true core. Dave, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, like, as I think, like, I'm like the first person with any sort of public personality to just be like, nobody's reading Mikey, or no one's reading him enough, or like people need to be reading The Dangerous Maybe. And I've just like been like saying it for a while, and now I'm about to do like kind of head up like a little marathon for this. So I just want to like add, like, one of the things that you didn't hear Michael just say is that he also read, before reading McGowan or even finding that podcast, he's already been reading this stuff for like 15 years. And in that reading, in that research, he's also read like 30 books about Lacan, and like, you know, will tell me personally, like, you know, oh, this one's really good and this one's really good, but yeah, none of these people are very good at talking about this, that, and the other thing. And so it's just like one of those things where it's like you don't realize how crystal clear somebody like McGowan is actually until you've actually put in the work with the people who aren't so crystal clear. Once you've read the people who are trying, and it's like their entire lifelong profession is teaching this stuff, and they're supposed to be like helping you understand the thinker or these concepts. And then you read the book and then you're like, but wait, what? After that, then you read McGowan, and then it's like, oh, you know. And so
yeah, I think you make this great point. You can't really appreciate someone like Todd unless you read all the other ones.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So.
Oh, interesting. It would be okay if I threw up some book covers.
Let's do it.
Go
First
for
off,
it.
I want to say thank you for this. This was an amazing gift, and I absolutely love how this book cover looks.
Thank you.
Hey, I'll throw up my book cover.
Yeah.
Oh wait. So
Oh,
yeah,
there you go.
I got that too, Dave.
Yeah, oh, you do. Oh, there we go.
I do.
It's so cool.
Yeah, I really like this one. This is Theory Plebes book.
The first book,
Waypoint.
yeah.
Time, Energy, Critical Media Theory, and Culture War. I did the cover for this a little bit ago. We worked on it together. Got this strange, you know, natural glitch digital world, like hybrid. I think it's very peaceful at the same time for us being as glitchy and weird as it is.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe I just find that stuff kind of peaceful as it is. And then Dave approached me and had this idea of wanting to turn some of Michael's works into books to ship it to him as a surprise. So we worked on some covers together, and I think we still got, you know, adjustments to make for anything that's final, and these aren't actually available. So this is just like a little teaser for people, but we do have, this one was my personal favorite, but I like them.
This one's so cool.
The Introduction to Lacan for Pedestrians. Go ahead.
No, I'll just say, so this one, like I say, this is an ongoing project, and as you know, this is built out of my various blog posts that I've done on Lacan, and Dave was kind enough, and you were kind enough to put this together for me, and Anne did the editing. And so it's just crazy for me to be able to hold the work I've done in my hands. And you know what? There's certain people who say like we're fetishizing the physical book, but I can't help it. Having a physical copy of my work really it's the coolest thing ever to me. And so this is a book though that I want to publish in the future. It's just that for me to like, I've already released a lot of this online. Now, of course, each one of these would have to be re-edited for book format. Like there's self-referential moments where like in one of them, I'm talking about Medium itself, like you're reading it on Medium. And so stuff like that would have to be edited out. But, and then the other thing is there's other chapters of this that I want to write. So I definitely would need to write a long post or a long chapter on sexuation, one on the 4 discourses. There needs to be one devoted entirely to jouissance, even though it's constant throughout all of them. And so that would basically be it, where I kind of focus it up. And
forgot about the big other.
Yeah, the big other post would have to be finished and all that. So, but no, this is definitely, I do want to write this introduction to Lacan and just basically add a bunch of stuff that's not on the blog, you know.
Right. And we have Zizek at work as well.
So this one we're hoping to have out sometime soon, probably be a couple months. But this one is close to being finished. It's just that this one, and the whole title is Zizek at Work, How Jouissance Factors into Wage Labor. And I wrote this, it's going to be published in a journal, as far as I understand, sometime this year. But right now, this is just the shorter version. I knew this was going to be a much longer work, but even the longer version, it'll probably be somewhere like around 100 pages. It'll be a short book, but and it's really, this is me kind of using Lacanian Zizekian theory to analyze wage labor and kind of do a lot of first person analyses of it, where I'm just describing what I've gone through at the last 2 jobs I've had. And yeah, it's really just an analysis of wage labor, and that, you know, there's all this, oh, what do we need psychoanalysis for on the left, right? Well, you need it to understand the interactions between human beings, because especially at work, everybody who's had to do wage labor knows that you deal with the employer, you know, your fellow employees who are always on your ass about, like, oh, you're taking too much time on your break, or you're not productive enough, or blah, blah, blah. They're always riding your ass. And then, you know, there's always this enjoyment they get out of messing with the new guy, whoever is new at the job. I'm seeing this right now at work. And so for me, I just constantly see jouissance or enjoyment. I know people don't know what these terms, they're psychoanalytic terms, and they refer to this type of enjoyment we get from self-destructive behaviors, from overexcitation, from doing things to the point that they become self-sabotaging. And to me, that's what wage labor is. Like, if we were purely beings of self-interest, we would unite, we would do what's in our collective self-interest, and we would, you know, structurally change our work environments, the system, etc. And that it's precisely because we're not self-invested in our own self-interest, at least not entirely, that we find that all we do is basically make it impossible for there to be any kind of worker solidarity at work. And it's like, sometimes you really like your coworkers, sometimes you don't. But what you find is that jouissance or enjoyment organizes these spaces from the ground up. And so I guess that's what I'm hoping this book will do, is show that this is why Zizek is actually relevant. This is why he's important to any type of leftist organization. You know, anybody, especially leftists, who have had a lot of experience in doing organizing, they know very well how this kind of enjoyment in self-sabotage really can mess up organizing. And it's a real problem. And so the better we understand how enjoyment works, the better we can understand how to deal with it. And that's the thing. Like, most people think, like, oh, these behaviors are productive, life affirming, make me have more safety and security, therefore that's what I'm going to pursue. But that's not what we pursue. And so that's where I think psychoanalysis has so much to teach us, in these concrete interactions we have at work. And once we get, like, what the driving motives are, we can start to go, okay, this is this person's form of enjoyment. And you start realizing, well, if you take it from them, it makes things worse. Well, what do? Well, then you have to try to, like, seduce them away from it without seeming like you're stealing it. And so that's just what this book is getting at. And it could be a much bigger project, but, you know, I've got another book that I'm working on that I want to get out this year. And so I'm just going to keep this. It's funny. There's really 3 versions of this book. The short one that's going to go in the journal, this longer but shorter one that I'm going to publish soon through NSP, and then the other one that I could write down the road.
Yeah, well, so in that way, it kind of carries on the Zizekian legacy of
Yeah.
you know, changing a text to be multiple text.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You know,
Um,
no, hey, just to pivot back, I just want to say you're right about Zizek. There are passages where he is so crystal clear and he is so gifted at making a certain concept or idea come to life. His biggest issue as a writer, because he is clearer than Deleuze and Baudrillard and Lacan, absolutely.
yeah,
His biggest problem is you cannot follow how he gets from one point to the next. The inferential links in his texts are incredibly difficult to follow. And so you feel like they're a collection of fragments, and yet you see that he put them in these big chapters, and they're all strung together, and you're like, how did we get from this movie example to Death Drive to this political situation? And it's not clear how he's getting there.
that Michael, that is actually, that's one of the things that when I first started reading Zizek, after a couple books, the first time I read it, I had that thing that we're talking about where it was difficult, and I really was confused at what was going on. I was like, I've read philosophy before. What is going on with this? I don't understand it, but it felt exciting to read and try to figure it out. And then I think my breakthrough happened when I came to the conclusion that the Zizek text, the form is part of the content. To me, the very structure of his arguments and the way he strings them together with those inferential links is itself part of the thing he's trying to say. And that's why, like, you know, YouTube video, like one-liner clips, even quotes like of a couple sentences always fail to capture the brilliance of actually reading, like, you know, the parallax view. The way that those arguments flow from one another, have these holes in them that are later returned to. They themselves feel like a Klein bottle of text.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so powerful, but also impenetrable. So it's like, you know, very, very mixed thing. You know, you definitely have to be somewhat dedicated to wanting to actually read a full theory book if you want to get that full experience. But at the same time, I do find his use of jokes and stuff a really easy way to just steal from him if I'm talking to coworkers or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, that reminds me of this philosopher tells there's this joke this philosopher talks about, and I'll repeat that, and then we can go into it and like try to relate it to the actual situation that's going on.
So I have this blog post in mind, and I've done some work on it. But you know, there's the book Zizek's jokes. What I want to do is I want to post each quote, and then underneath it, I want to go, here's the main theoretical point it's getting at. Here's the concept it's truly articulating. And so, like, where it would give the reader the ability to see this joke encapsulates Death Drive. This joke encapsulates Master Signifier, because he doesn't spell that out in the jokes. And there is the whole thing. If you explain a joke, the joke's no longer funny. But part of the problem is, but if you're not tapped into the theory, you can't understand the joke. And so you're just left going, was this a joke? And so that's part, I think the jokes do need to be explained.
Yeah, sometimes he has a really bad delivery, and he'll explain the joke, and you're like, wait, what? Where was the punchline? Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Now, I'm sorry if you've heard this joke before. Please humor me. And then he goes and he'll like repeat the same joke that you've heard like 20 times. Oh, I'm cutting out. Are we there?
No, you're there.
Oh, okay, I froze on my end, but okay. But then it takes like 20 times for me to finally get it though. And then and with the you go into the coffee shop, you order the coffee, and you say, "Oh, no cream," and then they go, "Oh, sorry, sir, we're out of cream. Can I do that with no milk?" Like that joke. Now that it actually makes sense to me, now that I'm like, I've thought a lot more about like what is it that continental theorists are doing with this concept of negation, you know, and now it makes sense. Now it works. But and now the joke's funny. Like it wasn't funny before. I was always like, why are you always telling this joke? Yeah.
Oh, so Michael, you said that you're hoping to publish. Well, you are publishing these, and you're hoping to publish a more expansive book of your work, of your theories, with NSP. What is NSP? Because we've mentioned that quite a bit, even before you jumped on. New Symbolization Project. And?
Oh gosh. New Symbolization Project in itself. Oh, we've gone. I'm on the spot here.
Maybe back.
Was started in.
Oh.
Like a club organization that is inspired by, I believe, Elaine Badu's book, The True Life, where in it he says, like, we need a new symbolization. We need a new way to think about the world, to go about our social life, and to talk about, like, our problems. And we literally need a new symbolization, because clearly all of the thinking and political work and activism that we've been doing hasn't really changed fundamentally the way that we live our lives as human beings. And so, I mean, Dave, I'm kind of talking about like where New Symbolization even started, so you probably have more to say since it was your baby.
Yeah, so there's multiple aspects of we can talk about the way it came about over time as a sort of student org that was a shell for an off-campus org, kind of how the Frankfurt School used institutions on campuses to secure funding for things that they wanted to do. That was an idea, and we brought Michael Downs to come give a talk when we were. I think the campus-based shell organization at the time was called Equilibrium when we brought Mikey, and that club was more of like, oh, we're into slacklining, hiking, and talking about philosophy, and mainly social and political philosophy, and this was an emphasis on like, breaking mind-body dualism and being more engaged, like balanced people. And then there was a whole genesis of different organizations and names and things like that. And a lot of those are just like my experiments that failed in various ways, or organizations I got involved with other people, or I don't know. The main thing I want to say about New Symbolization now is that it's New Symbolization Publishing. So it's still NSP, but it's publishing, not project now. And maybe we'll use that old name for some other aspect of the project. I mean, it's all a big project, and publishing's one arm of it. But from my personal standpoint, it's about time energy. And time energy is not energy, and it's not time. Time energy is the existential condition of both time and energy. It comes before those things get fragmented, before traditional cyclical time is reduced to linear event independent time, and that's what makes time go from cyclical to linear. It's the law of value, and it's labor power being a commodity on the market, meaning that, I mean, you'll have people who have lots of time in their day, or they have lots of energy in their day, and they might even have both. But as far as like a pre-economic societal community sort of condition, like a thing that we all have, it's not. Like, if you're unemployed, you might have some sporadic bursts of energy and you've got some time, but is there a community of people you can be engaged with and do things with outside of like a specialized hobbyist, organization, like some bicycle riding people, or some like language learning community, or some theater group, or whatever? Like, the thing is like the whole world right now is built around the majority of our time and energy gets reduced to labor power through economics. And then with the leftovers that we have, we go to the movie theater, we go to the bar, we get involved with like a hobby, right? and those kinds of communities that we get involved with that off time kind of presuppose people who are in a similar situation where they don't really have a lot to give. They're mostly just consumers who are there to like hang out and get away from their job for a minute so they can recharge for their job. You can't do like long term sustained organizing that really builds into something fucking epic though. And so that becomes a problem for like self-actualizing, for like skill development, for being a more multiple dimensional kind of person who's not just like, I work a job and I also like to ride bikes. Like, no, we also want to understand the world and not just specialize in like one little area, And so a new symbolization like has time energy at its center, and it says we need a new symbolic, existential, structural like way of thinking and talking about everything. And I don't know if I'm doing a very good job explaining it, but that's kind of what it's about.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So kind of taking like the project organization that we had, this cool logo, NSP, with like the time energy through it, and then Plebe is like, I need to publish a book. I'm gonna make my own publishing company out of our same initials, NSP, and we'll just turn the P into publishing. Now it's a thing. So that's how we're bringing it back. We like changed our social media handles, just like the new Symbolization cache. Like, we don't know what's happening with us right now. We had some videos and some podcast interviews, but now we're like revamping it, trying to get that mission going again right now through the means of like publishing books. And yeah, the project will probably come back as its own sort of organization.
But yeah, go for it. I have one more thing, but go for it, Adam.
Well, mine's a little bit of a tangent, so go ahead, Dave.
Okay, well, I was just gonna say that Waypoint has like a new Symbolization publishing statement at the end of it, and it's probably too long to read on stream. It's 3 paragraphs. I don't want to read it right now. I would just encourage people to check out the NS Publishing.substack.com if you want to read it for yourself, and make sure to subscribe there for free if you want to keep in the loop on what's going to be happening with hashtag Free Mikey. Free Mikey is like a really big part of all of it, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, okay, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, so the other day, well, a couple weeks ago, at the coffee shop, Kava Bar, a guy came up to me and was like, hey, I've been asking, and this guy is like maybe mid-40s. He's like, I've been asking people, what does financial security mean to you? And I had a long day of reading. I had been like really reading some Marcuse, and I had been reading Waypoint and going through it. And so I kind of unloaded on him. I was like, I don't know if that's the right question to ask. And I like was trying to formulate my understanding of time energy to him. And at the end of it, he went, wow, you've really thought about this kind of stuff, I guess. Huh.
Nice.
I'll get back to you to that. And he has never talked to me again. So I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing.
That's our main goal.
He's having an existential crisis about time energy, and you broke him, I think.
Well, he definitely, I saw something in his mind where he was like, I have never considered this. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I truly consider time energy theory to be like really fundamental to the way that I think about the world now. It's influenced my schoolwork, it's influenced my research, it's influenced my own intellectual passions, and it's like, well, duh, like, of course, everyone should be talking about this.
No, and I want to say that I think Dave crafted a concept that is of incredible importance And so I've always been aware of how capitalism structures and controls temporality, right? And Adorno wrote about this, Baudrillard wrote about it. Other thinkers had thought about what capitalism does to time, but I've never known anybody who connected these dots. And we, even in everyday language, we talk about, oh, I don't have the time and energy to do this. Dave was able to connect how you don't have time without energy, you don't have energy without time, and this incredible dialectical relationship between the two. And for me, like, I can't think with I cannot think about our situation and what we're all going through now without thinking in terms of time energy. And so on a practical level, when I talk to the guys I work with, I'll use this term and they really respond to it, right? If I talk about labor power, you know, they check out, they don't care, it means nothing. Exactly. And so that's, like, on the one level, I love it as a concept, but on another level, I love it for how I'm able to talk to them about, don't you feel like you don't have the time and energy for X, Y, Z? And they're all on board with all of this. And so part of what I think American leftists really have to start thinking about is we do need different signifiers. We need different words and new ways of articulating what capitalism does to us that does not form a semiotic link with gulags or Joseph Stalin. And look, I get there's plenty of leftists. We can think through this and we can understand the nuances and go, it's such bullshit to link socialism to that. But dealing with the average American worker, they're not going for it. And time energy discourse opens up a whole new path where they are on board with it. And that's, to me, part of what I think Dave and myself in our own ways are trying to do. I'm a leftist. I mean, if you ask me, oh, well, okay, let's get into details. I don't know. Like, depends on what day you ask me. But I think it's important to maintain a kind of like naive leftism where I'm holding true to the basic principles of the leftist tradition. And what I'm trying to, through holding true to them, you start asking, okay, how can these actually become a force that can impact American politics? Well, it's not going to be through old aesthetics or old signifiers. It has to be thought anew. And that's part of new symbolization. And again, like, you know, I'm dangerous maybe, but I have this close link with NSP because of Dave. But what we both have in common is that dangerous maybe NSP, we're both deeply invested in thinking through what a new symbolization would be. And so I think time energy is absolutely essential to that.
I have to ask, because maybe it was just the cadence there. I have always interpreted dangerous maybe as a maybe that's dangerous, like the idea of questioning. But the way that you just said that, Michael, you said, I'm dangerous maybe, like I may be dangerous. I was like, wait, have I been misreading this the whole time?
No, I love that. Like, that's some slip on my part. Yeah, my dangerousness is definitely up for question. But no, so dangerous maybe, it actually comes from Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil. And there's one of my blog posts. It's not one anybody would actually want to read based on the title. I think it's just like update on the Dangerous Maybe blog. But that's where I actually explain the name of it. And it really, I mean, that to me is exactly what it means. It means philosophy. It means questioning. And so the dangerous maybe is the dangerous question, the dangerous philosophizing. And I feel that's how Nietzsche was using it. But I just felt like dangerous maybe is a great name for a philosophy blog. I hate like, okay, so if I say I'm dangerous maybe, I just mean like I'm the author of it.
Right,
There's
right.
been times where people are like, do you want to be called the dangerous? Like, hell no. Like no, the blog is the dangerous, maybe I'm not. So
Sure.
but you know, when you you know, it's like you're the acid left, right?
Right.
Like, so that's part of it. But you know, that was funny.
No, yeah, names are weird. Names are very, very weird. But it has that, you know, saying I'm dangerous, maybe, almost
Right.
has that reverse of the Zizek being treated like a clown by some people, you know.
Mhm.
Anyways,
Yeah.
Clown, maybe?
clown. Maybe it's all a joke, or maybe it's revolution.
Oh no, you go.
No, go ahead, Dave.
Oh, just I had a little bookmark or tab. I like to use the metaphor of tabs on a browser that was still open. Because I was like, well, there's just one thing I had to say still about time energy, because I wasn't planning on getting into it in the stream. But if it comes up, then we have to do it. So basically, first of all, Waypoint, you can listen to it for free on any podcast app. I decided not to go with the Audible publishing route. So you can just look it up on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, Overcast, Apple, Google, doesn't matter. And it's just me reading it. I think I probably burp and fart on my way through reading it. I don't know, but it's just me reading it. It's not very polished, but if you really want to get it in one spot, I think the best you can probably get as far as that concept is just the afterword of the book. Because I try to recapitulate everything in one spot, and I try to get everybody just like thinking about like this is in motion. It's a process, and if you're going to start using the concept and thinking about your life through it, like maybe you'll have some insights or realizations that are useful for the development of the theory. And like in that case, I'd consider you a fellow traveler, and you should be talking about it. But just make sure before you go using the concept, you just keep in mind it's not just like, oh, you know, so it's the weekend and you feel energized and you have the whole day ahead of you. So you're like, well, shit, I have time energy right now. No, you don't. And so there's two reasons that you don't. One is because it's a communal thing, right? And so first of all, maybe if your entire class, like your class has time and energy, there could be an argument there. But the more important thing is it has to be energy with time that has the potential to be to repeatedly do whatever the thing is that you want to do, if for it to be of value, right? Because if you have a burst of energy and a few hours time, you could go on a hike with some friends or go get some coffee, you know, like there's different kinds of energy, and I get into all that stuff elsewhere. But the main thing is that you can't learn the violin in a day. You can't, and most things that are worth doing, you can't do in a day. And just because you have energy on this weekend doesn't mean that you'll have a weekend with energy and time soon enough to be able to repeat the thing, so that the time spent conquering the learning curve actually gets internalized and embodied and becomes a part of you, so that you're actually able to utilize those skills on future projects. You'll just spend forever trying over and over again just to learn the basic ABCs of whatever it is you're getting into, and you'll never be able to repeat it like soon enough. And so it's time with the potential to repeat plus energy. So that's the clarification.
So what is New Symbolization Publishing doing next? We got Waypoint out. We're publishing Michael's stuff, or at least some of it. And then what else? Is that it?
We made the decision like 3 days ago that I should write a book too. Why not? And it was no,
Like 3 days ago.
You're right. It was a week ago. Well, and it wasn't just like, oh, we need more books. Like I've done research at the university I graduated from for 2 years, kind of going off of Mark Fisher's concept of capitalist realism. So I was talking to Adam kind of before we started live streaming about sorry, I'm like falling asleep over here, so I'm like, what are we just talking about? No, talking about this research a little bit, and I literally just lost my entire train of thought.
Let me play agent publisher really quick and just okay. So, part of all of this was like Mikey just wanted me to get something in my hands that I'd published, and he really pushed me to do it for like a year and a half. And he was convinced that just holding it would change things for me in some important way, and it did. And that's why we secretly got him those. Yumi and Ann got these, additions to him, so he and his mom could feel totally moved. His mom said she can die happy now, and so, I wanted Anne to have that experience because of the research that she's done, that she's presented at conferences. It's legit, it's real, it's important. People, especially intellectuals, have this tendency to feel imposter syndrome and talk themselves back down to earth, so that other people won't do it. But I'll just, take a stand here and just say, no, it's important. It's a real contribution to the capitalist realism conversation. But it's not just a real contribution like, oh, she's got an informed position, in the theory world, but she's done sociological research for a couple of years, interviewing hundreds of students. And so the fact that she interviewed all these students, so, there's a part of capitalist realism where Fisher's talking about the depressive hedonia, and that's one of my favorite parts of that.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite parts of the whole book. And so people who don't know, depressive speaks for itself. Hedonia is like, pleasure seeking. And so, hi there, Roslyn. Oh my gosh, we've got a baby here. She just ran out to say hi to me. She's hanging out with the goats and sheep. They just got home. Hi there, Roslyn. Anyway, but what Anne adds is the personal reports from students who don't have the concepts Fisher is working with, but they know that what they're doing doesn't make any sense, or doesn't speak to their values or their greater purpose, yet they're doing it anyways. And so, go.
Keep going. Yeah, so it's not even necessarily like in my initial research, I argued it's more than just realism. It is just straight up like fatalistic. These students do not like corporate work. They want jobs where they can travel, and they want to have meaningful lives and careers that help people. And then at the very same time, they're like contradicting themselves in their entire beliefs, going, yeah, no, I think this corporation that's on campus is really valuable and is really watching out for me as an individual, and I'm going to apply to this specific grad school because these big corporations hire from here, and I just need to get in and get out of here as soon as possible and start working for the rest of my life to pay off the mass amount of debts that I'm accruing. So they are like hyper aware of the situation that they are in, the situation that they are putting themselves in by paying tens of thousands of dollars in higher education, and then like just still doing it anyways, and just accepting that this is their sad reality and they're miserable and they can't do anything about it. And so not only did I see that through research, but I have like a unique lens as well, just being a student and these being my peers for 3 years, and just being like really discouraged that no one seems to care. Professors aren't making anything challenging or rigorous because they know that students are just there to get the degree, to get out. No one's there because they want to read hard texts and think about the world in challenging ways. So I have like student perspective, I have researcher perspective, and now I am an instructor for a required course, but you get to kind of be flexible on what the topic of the course is. And it's about, is college worth it? So kind of taking this sociological like exploration of neoliberalism in higher education and simplifying it for college freshmen, And so I have this brand new perspective of like trying to excite these students and teach them, and realizing, oh, for the most part, they don't care like very much, and how that affects me, and then just how that like contributes to the research, having it from like all three of these perspectives. So I figured there's a lot more to be said here, so I'll just kind of use all these things to, yeah.
That's a lot of work, but I mean, I think, yeah, like Glebe was just saying, like that actual sociological research goes a long way in contributing something useful. I'm looking for something really fast to pull up. Oh damn, where am I saying? Where are you? These images eluding me.
What you looking for?
I am looking for an image.
Show me what you're looking for. Show me what you're looking for. Watch yourself.
I'm not gonna find it. I'm not gonna find my image.
John.
It's so sad. Oh, I found it.
Hey.
Sometimes you have to give up.
True.
I don't know if that's a good message.
Deep. That's deep.
I think that's like the technical. That's like the technical tip. You should always restart the PC before you call the person to come fix it. You know.
True.
Sometimes you just need to give up before. Oh, here we go.
There it is. Mark Fisher's students want one thing. It's fucking disgusting. They want Nietzsche as a hamburger.
Is this because he says in capitalist realism that people want Nietzsche easy, but what they don't understand is that he is the difficulty?
Yeah, they want Nietzsche without the difficulty, but reading Nietzsche is the difficulty, or the difficulty is the thing that you gain. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about that thrill of trying to understand something and wrap your head around something, the way it feels to have your world kind of torn apart and then reassembled, but also, yeah, he says they want it like Burger King or something like that. Just funny. I also want to.
Hi, could I please understand all of Nietzsche? Yeah, sure. Would you like fries with that? Yes, please.
Exactly.
Easy, no work. Cost you $5.
I want to bring this up. I would like y'all to comment on this if you have the desire to do so.
If capitalism makes you suffer, but you also enjoy that suffering, what does that mean?
Okay, so hold on. Let me just say, I love this meme and I love the quote. Can you? Okay, do me a favor. Do you know where precisely Marx said this?
It is in Post-Capitalist Desire, the final lecture series. And it's where he's going over. It's been a minute since I've read it, but I believe it is him going over.
Is it Lyotard's libidinal economy?
Yes.
Okay, because first off, I just love this quote. It so sums up, I mean, really what Zizek, McGowan, and I guess myself, since my work is based so much around the work they're doing, that's what Death Drive really explains. And this is what, like we were talking about Todd's book earlier, like Capitalism and Desire, like you can say that whole book is an answer to Mark's question. It's like Todd read Mark's question and goes, all right, Mark, I hear what you're saying. Here's my response. And it's Capitalism and Desire.
Nice.
And so, I mean,
that's
so
a
I
good
recently
endorsement to read that book.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I really think it's a modern classic. And so, okay, a couple things. One, I think what Todd does, and Zizek does it, but I don't think Zizek's ever just stated it this clearly. So the difference between Zizek and McGowan with how they use psychoanalysis to interpret capitalist society from, say, the Frankfurt School or like Reich, any of these other leftists, right? So the psychoanalytic oriented leftists typically thought that the big problem is repression, that we have certain desires and certain forms of enjoyment that capitalism represses, and the job is to de-repress, to lift the prohibitions and make it where these forms of enjoyment, forms of desire are permitted. And so the idea is that capitalism deprived human beings of desire. Now, of course, but whether we're talking about homosexuals or transgender, that's true. Like, there's a sense where that was repressed. But on a broader level, what Zizek and McGowan are doing is like, of course, there's various forms of repression that have occurred. But as far as, I guess we could just say, for normies, right? Like, actually, the trick is capitalism gives us excessive enjoyment. It's the reverse hypothesis. And so McGowan explains this in terms of these other leftists from Frankfurt School on up. They take the earlier Freud's theory of, we have, polymorphous perversity, right? But then sexuality ends up getting organized in certain ways that are acceptable in society. And because of that, certain desires are repressed and you can't act on them. That's early Freud. But once Freud thinks death drive, then we have a total different paradigm in psychoanalysis. And so once you realize, like, wait, enjoyment is actually the enjoyment of loss, of sacrifice, of not getting what we want, right? Once this model of enjoyment shifts, you have to rethink how you apply psychoanalysis to the critique of capitalist society. And so this different take in Freud is what McGowan highlights early on in Capitalism and Desire. And so instead of thinking in terms of the repression hypothesis, that capitalism deprives us of enjoyment and we need to fight to get those forms, he takes like, no, what it does is actually bombards us with enjoyment, but also at the same time convinces us we don't have enjoyment. That's the trick. And the way he does that is through the relationship between desire and drive. And you know this, right? Like, if you're doing these Lacanian concepts, there's so much to both of these concepts of desire and drive. And that's, like, I just posted a review of McGowan's Capitalism and Desire on my blog, and it's a strange review because really all I do is try to flesh out this distinction between desire and drive. And that's if there's, like, it's a good thing and a bad thing. Todd didn't really flesh out this distinction in the book. And if he did, the book would probably have to be another 50 pages long because it requires so much work. He tried to just have it operating, I would say, like, operating in the background, but still in a way that everything else remains intelligible. And so that, to me, is what I tried to do with the review, is say, all right, here's what's really operating in the background. And that, to me, is the big takeaway of that. Oh, yeah, I love that you did this, right?
It felt appropriate at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, and it really is, like, so Death Drive, I mean, there's so much we can say about it, but it's this, if you call it a will or you call it a force, those are kind of misrepresentation. There's a tendency in us that enjoys depriving us of getting what we want, right? Like, we have fantasies about what we want, if I just had this, if I just had that, that's the kind of life that would be satisfying to me. And what we don't realize, it's our real enjoyment, our concrete enjoyment, is gained through how we actually prevent ourselves from getting what we want. And it's a tricky concept. It's very counterintuitive at first, but once it clicks and you start seeing things through this distinction between desire and drive, it's like a whole world opens up to you. And so that's basically like, this is why I'm so big on Zizek and McGowan and what they've done with Lacanian psychoanalysis, is because they're operating with the later Freud of death drive, opposed to the earlier Freud of basically, I guess we just call it repression theory.
The only Freud I've actually read as full work is Civilization and its Discontents, which I quite enjoyed. Which I believe that's later, right? That's like one of his last books.
That's, yes, and that's him. Death drive is operative in that text. And so that's him kind of applying death drive to society as a whole, even though I think somewhere, because McGowan talks about this, Freud says you can't really apply death drive to society as a whole, but then he goes and does it. And so, and Todd has no problem doing it, neither does Zizek. So, like there's great stuff in the early Freud, don't get me wrong. It's just that once he theorizes that there's this other principle at work in us besides the pleasure principle seeks to establish equilibrium, safety, security, balance. You have a good footing in the world. You're taking care of yourself. It's thinking in terms of well-being, like what's in your long-term rational self-interest, right? And that's essentially, pleasure for Freud was the lack of excitation in the body. And so pleasure is gained through releasing built-up excitation and returning back to homeostasis. What he came to realize more and more is he kept seeing in his patients, like, I have patients that just keep doing things that prevent them from being in a state of pleasure. What is this other thing? And at first, he thinks it in terms of, post-traumatic stress syndrome, right? People, why do they keep repeating these dreams every night that cause them pain, that get them overly excited, if pleasure principle is the only principle in their psyches? And so through seeing how PTSD affected people coming home from World War I, or how a young child will throw a toy away and the toy represents the mother, and so it's like it's repeating this traumatic loss. Like the mom goes away, she comes back, she disappears again, she comes back. And so even a kid, like mimicking this loss, right, repeats this pleasure and pain. And so what Freud essentially came to realize is that there's two tendencies. There's one tendency in us that wants to get rid of excitation, have balance, security, stability. And then there's another one that wants to go towards chaos, destabilization, self-destruction, self-problematizing, like you put hurdles and obstacles in your own way because it creates friction and tension in you. That's jouissance in one way to talk about it. And so this distinction to me is absolutely essential. And Zizek and McGowan use this distinction in a way that a lot of other psychoanalytic-oriented leftists didn't.
Well, and I would just add that you make it relevant, and that I'm really, really slow usually with integrating new concepts into actually how I see things, and it takes me like a couple of years of mulling it over before I finally am like, I really have the light bulb moment. I usually explain something to Anne, and then she's using it and seeing things. She can make sense. She's quick on the uptake. I'm slow on the uptake, is what I'm trying to say. But when jouissance and death drive finally clicked for me in the ways that Michael's talking about right now, I'd say that's only really happened in the last 6 months, and it's been like a dawning set of realizations that they call everything into question, and at the same time, like, are sort of freeing and empowering in a way, because it's like that principle that the unexamined life is not worth living. It's like, well, if you haven't really thought about how your subjectivity is all wound up with can become addicted to its own self-undermining sort of things, and then you just think, oh, there's all these things that keep getting in the way, and you it's like, oh, what if I'm part of it? What if I'm part of what keeps getting in the way? And how does that work? And once you start thinking it through, like, it's great. It's all I just want to.
And then the harder thing is, not only am I getting in my own way, I like it. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's why psychoanalysis, it's so hard to deal with. I mean, they even say you can't really incorporate death drive into your sense of self, because the whole point is that I'm talking like a Lacanian here, your imaginary sense of self, your ego, the way you view yourself, the last thing you think is, oh, like, I want to destroy that in some way, or I want to prevent my ideal image from coming about. Like, it's completely a form of like self-violence. But at the same time, and this is the key, if you try to take someone's forms of jouissance away from them, you destroy them. And so that's the biggest hurdle to deal with, is that the ways people mess themselves up, give themselves trouble, self-sabotage are the things that keep them going in life. It's a weird predicament we're in as human beings.
I guess the last thing I would say about all of that is just that you kind of said what's next, though, Adam, and I don't know what the timeline on this is or what, because Michael's working, but for the last couple of years he's been writing the book, and it basically what he just was talking about. If you were like, wow, I wish somebody who really understood how to break this stuff down would go in depth into how the different forms of addictive enjoyment structure online discourse and consumerism and culture war and all of that, well, that's the book that no one has seen so far, but that is ultimately the real project Michael's working on. So
yeah, but I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, that's the main project, but Zizek at work really is me applying all of this in wage labor. And I mean, I guess it's kind of a message to the left, where if we just think, oh, there's ideology, it's false consciousness, and if we just tell people the truth, they're going to just naturally realize what's in their self-interest. Everybody's going to collectively organize, and there's going to be worker solidarity. Why does this never happen? Well, I'm trying to say, like, here's the secret, is that, and McGowan himself, even, this is one of his critiques of Marx, and maybe it's fair or unfair to make this of Marx himself. We can have that discussion. It definitely is fair to say this is most Marxists, that they honestly have adopted unconsciously the ontology or the theory of the subject of bourgeois economy, that homo economicus, that we're rational self-agents pursuing our own self-interest. And like, the standard Marxian thing would just be, oh, but we get taught bad ideas from the capitalist class, and so we can't see what's in our self-interest. But if we have class consciousness, we'll see what's in our self-interest, and we'll all act in our self-interest. No, we won't. And that is what I think the great insight of psychoanalysis can be for leftists, is we go, okay, here's what we're really dealing with. Now, how do we deal with it? Because just trying to tell, oh, here's what's in your self-interest, let's organize, it doesn't work. And so we have to realize people don't actually want what's in their self-interest. If that's the case, if we're dealing with a different ontology, then what is to be done? And
people acted in their self-interest, we wouldn't be where we are today now, would we?
No, and I think that's the thing, right? Like, that's what capitalism and desire especially tries to highlight. Why don't people just do what's in their self-interest and stop this exploitation and whatever we want to call a different society? Why don't we do that? Well, because we enjoy capitalism. We get our self-destructive enjoyment out of it. And so, I mean, there's a million different, whether it's eating poor fast food, or whether it's pop culture, or whether it's alcohol, or whether it's spending too much money, if you're lucky enough to have that problem anymore. That's the thing. It's like the hook is that we actually do enjoy capitalism, and what do we do about that? And so that's what I would say Zizek, McGowan, and myself were all thinking through in different ways.
I've been wanting to read the Capitalism and Desire book already, and then I started reading, Michael, your review of it, and I was like, okay, I have to read this now. Like, I know it'll be really influential to my own kind of research and thoughts on like students, specifically students under capitalist realism, and 18 to 22-year-olds trying to figure out what to do with their lives. And yeah, so I'm excited to explore this more.
I'm excited.
Already my brain is like,
I might get it and do a reading group on it, because I was supposed to do, as Dave knows, a reading group on the new Zizek book. And I gotta be honest, I bought it and I started flipping through it, looking at the things to figure out a way to structure it. And I felt a little disappointed in Heaven in Disorder. It just was not what I was looking for. It's a very much like a collection of articles, pretty much, and to the point where each chapter is like 2 pages,
right?
And it, to me, I read through the first like 30 pages or so, and I was like, oh, I mean, it's it's okay, but it's not the thing I enjoy Zizek for. But Capitalism Desire absolutely sounds much more fruitful to digest. So we might switch up gears and go into that.
I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Well, that's exciting, because I was definitely going to try to participate in that reading group. And Capitalism and Desire is a book that I would actually say I'm a good example of one of the people who was reading it and then was just like, so what? And it took Mikey's like expanding on it for me to kind of realize that I wasn't taking it seriously enough. I wasn't really, and it really, I think this is where Michael first formulated it's so clear that you're missing it. I think, is that right, Michael? I feel like the first time you really went into that was because I was missing things that McGowan was saying that were just too clear for me to like feel troubled enough to really engage with.
Yeah, I think that conversation we had is what pointed that out to me. And the thing is, again, I have listened to like countless hours of this podcast and absorbed so much from it. Like, I'm kind of to the point where like Todd will write something and I'll know where he's going with it before I finish it. But it really is this thing where, and Dave, you and I, you know this, you've talked about this before. I believe it's even in Time Energy. So when a book is difficult, it keeps you kicking into what Heidegger called the mode of unreadiness to hand, where things are broken down. And when things break down, they're not working properly, you have to become interrogative. You have to inspect what's going on. You have to become critical and reflective and think through it, right? Well, when a book is notoriously difficult, like simulacra simulation, totality, infinity, being in time, you're doing this every other sentence. You're constantly going, what is he saying? Oh, okay, now I get it, right? If you're not doing that, if it never breaks down, if the book itself stays in readiness to hand, where it's just completely functioning, you don't stop, you don't absorb each sentence or each paragraph. It's you just breeze through it, and you end up going, okay, what was the point? And so there's this predicament where, Foucault famously said that he felt like he had to write in a more difficult style than he really wanted to. Like McGowan, I think, knows that he could build a much bigger, I guess, intellectual fandom if he wrote in this opaque, obscure style. He's just not going to do it. And like, I absolutely admire him for this.
Yeah.
Like, he's somebody that people who don't know all this Lacanian theory and all this stuff could read him and really start to get tapped in to these ideas. But at the same time, like I say, he's so clear. You never feel like you have to stop and reflect on what you're reading and piece things together. And so it creates a little bit of a disservice where, just like Freud, everybody go, oh, I read it. That was clear. No problem. I understand it. They don't understand it. And so all I'm saying is, like, it needs the same attention conceptually that these harder texts force you to have. And so it's almost like you have to force yourself. Okay, I'm stopping. That was crystal clear. Did I really understand it? Let me ask myself. And it's like you almost have to force yourself to stop in a way that you just comes naturally if you're reading Heidegger or Sartre or Merleau-Ponty.
I want to say, like, as a person who is not as well read as the three of you, reading things like that where they are a bit more accessible than your normal, like, philosophy theory jargon. Oh my gosh, these goats. Reading those, or like Michael, reading your blog posts, which, like, I feel like are a lot, just the language that you use is a lot more accessible to maybe, like, where you three who are already so well read, maybe it is a bit easier, but as someone who is not, it does, like, it's like, oh, because it is accessible, I'm, like, really making sure I get it and, like, wrapping my brain around it. So, like, it is appreciated. And I think, I'm sure some people read it and just go, oh, okay, but, like, as an introduction into getting into the harder stuff, it's like, it's so awesome that it can be made a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess this is the other, like, I try to notice, because I strive for the same level of clarity that Todd has. I think the only difference between us is that I'm very quote heavy. Like, I really want to quote Lacan, and
yes, he is.
You notice this, like, most Lacanians don't really quote Lacan that much. I mean, they'll quote a famous line, like, oh, do not cede one's, the ethics of desire, right? Don't give ground relative to your desire. The desire is the desire of the other. All of these famous aphorisms, but they don't quote him out of the seminars. And that's what I try to do. I want to introduce his own words into whatever I'm doing, but that requires actual exegesis. You really have to unpack them like somebody teaching scripture. And it sounds funny, and this is me. Like, I grew up strong Christian fundamentalist background, but one of the things about being a Baptist for so many years that really still registers with me, and that it's the big thing that I took away from it, was Baptists do intensive Bible studies, and line by line, verse by verse, doing all the cross-referencing. And that's something I learned from that form of Christianity that I still use to this day. Like, I really learned how to study because I was a Baptist. It sounds funny, but no, I mean, I give them credit. They're beasts when it comes to doing line by line detailed exegesis. And so I guess that's what I'm trying to do with Lacan and the rest of them as I can. But yeah, it's like, I always feel like Lacan's quotes himself. His own words are often left out when Lacanians are doing their thing. And So the point is, well, if you leave them out, you can tell people Lacan said all these things and believed all these things, and yet you never know where to go in his work to say, oh, see, this is where he says it. And so that's why I try to be very quote oriented. And sometimes that can be like it's overly scholarly, I think, because there's so many quotes. But I've had people go, you shouldn't, the only thing you do is you do these really long quotes and you spend a lot of time unpacking them. And I'm going, yeah, that's the point. Like,
yeah, and then as the reader, it gives you a chance to. I just have like very distinct memories of like Dave and I on road trips, and I'm reading your blog post, and we're going back and forth between what you said and the quote, going, okay, wait, okay, so this is this one, and this is the symbol, and this, and so like, you know, for me, for us, it is helpful to see them like right next to each other if you're getting a little bit of both and it's broken down right there for you. You have to make sure you're understanding it by going back and like, at least if you're reading actively and trying to understand it, I guess.
So thank you. And so I will, okay, this is a moment of narcissism, but just indulge me. So in the review of Capitalism and Desire, and I've pointed this out to Dave, there is a paragraph from Seminar 11 where Lacan is trying to explain basically the circuit of the drive. And this one paragraph, it's just impenetrable. You have no idea what the hell he's talking about. And it's only because of my background, having read all these other Lacanians, that I was able to understand what he's getting at. And so I spent a lot of time in that post just unpacking this one paragraph where he's talking about, oh, you know, the drive is like, it's like a dynamo connected up to a gas tap, something like that. And then the peacock feather emerges and you're sitting there going, what the hell is this dude talking about? And so like that's where it's like, okay, my job is to make sense of this. And it takes like 15 paragraphs of me unpacking it to go, this is everything that's going on in this one paragraph. So
let me just say what I said in the comments. We have a private chat comments. I'm the only person who said anything in there. It was just a bookmark, just so nobody thinks that there's a whole side conversation going. There's not. I promise. I swear.
There's two things in there.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say, like, how convenient to researchers at public or private, research, institutions, that there's no expectation that they tell you where they're getting these quotes from, or really like elaborate on like what these quotes actually are saying. How convenient, and I say convenient sarcastically because like we know, and it's, we should be sympathetic somewhat because academics are in a really hard situation right now, having to teach like 6 classes where they repeat themselves constantly for an audience that is assumed to not care, who they're trying to like, hey, you should care about things that you'll never have the time or energy to actually like go deeper into, so I'm sympathetic of like the fact that they're stretched so thin, repeatedly teaching boring ass content, and then expected to also be publishing research at the exact same time. And so, most of the time that's going to be, oh, well, then there's a quantitative or qualitative. And then they don't even really use theory. They're mostly just like, it's convenient in the sense that like, we really couldn't expect that they would be able to do what Michael has done. And it's kind of crazy that you're not going to be able to get that from an academic, that you're only going to get that from Michael. So that's why you all need to go to his Patreon and support it if you can. But more importantly, not you all. I mean, the fact is like, look, support it if you can. But what we really need are all these professors who use Mikey's blog in their classrooms. We need them to support him. And I'm talking hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands, maybe like get a research grant for Mikey. I don't know. We shouldn't have to bootstrap everything on our own. And the fact that there's people all over the world using his hard work that he's done on his off time, while he's got to work a regular wage labor thing, and they're not like already supporting Free Mikey, like that, shame on them. They want to talk about privilege. you want to talk about privilege? You're using all of Michael's like hard work in your graduate classes, and Mikey doesn't even get to get one of the same degrees that your students are like, you know, trying to patch together. So I just want us all to like think about it, about how we can free Mikey. And so that it's just, we have to do it. We need those books, and we need a lot more of these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, clearly the work is
Wow.
important. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Michael, because it happened like a couple of years ago. But I was in my like research cohort, and we were talking about Forms of Capital by Pierre Bourdieu, and the student goes, "Oh, guys, I found this really great blog online that really breaks it down. It's called The Dangerous Maybe." And I go, "Wait a second, I know that guy." So that was kind of cool. So like obviously people are finding it, using it. The three of us are finding it really useful, and so that's what like the Free Mikey campaign is all about. It's like, we need your books. We need them soon.
Well,
You don't have the time and energy to do it when you're also like working all the time. So.
And that's it. Like wage labor is a passion killer, and it's only through, like, I wish I could say like I have this like noble sense of duty or something. No, I just have such resentment towards the system that like I get off work and go write every night for 4 hours, and it's really my bitterness. But that's the thing, right? Like, I'm fine with bitterness and resentment if it's aimed at the system. That's, I mean, to me, that's, I'm okay with that. It's when those feelings get mobilized towards blaming specific groups, that's the big issue. And so, but okay, so back to point is just, yeah, I've had, I would say 10 professors who I greatly admire their work. Some are Lacanians, one's a Baudrillardian, Heideggerians, who will say they've taught my blog posts. They recommend them to their students, have them read them. And I mean, for me, that's an honor. Like, I mean, it's crazy for me because, again, I do not think of myself as an intellectual or an academic. And so anytime one of these people who's, I had one recently, I'm not going to name names, but I had one recently who I really do have a lot of respect for, contact me and just tell me like, "Oh yeah, I use your Lacan posts in my seminars with my grad students." And I'm just like, it's a very surreal thing for me, and it really does mean the world to me when I hear that. It's just like, okay, but I want to be able to keep going. Like, I want to be able to have, it sounds funny. I mean, any of us who are, students of Mark Fisher, like, we don't have a future, but I still I want to fight for some sort of future where I get to at least write and research and do this kind of stuff.
So if you have a professor that's using Michael's work, that's maybe sending you The Dangerous Maybe, but not actively supporting him, boo that man.
Perfect.
I love it.
Oh, it is. That's so complicated and weird.
Now I have to watch Half Baked tonight.
I know.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
Me either. And I'm sure there is quite a lot in it I would not like as I did when I was 14. But
right, yeah.
We actually, the coffee shop I work at, we put it on the TV. There's always a TV playing random stuff. We put it on last night, so that's why that was freshly in my head. So I looked up at that scene and the whole bar was cracking up because they knew what was going on. Yeah.
That's great.
Do we have time? Do y'all want to discuss anything about upcoming book covers or any changes you want to make? I have time. I don't know if you do though. I don't want to force you.
I need to go in a sec, and you
Yeah.
both could stay and chat if you want. But my phone is dying, and I left my headphones at Ann's house, and so I had to use my phone instead of my regular streaming setup. Which you're right though, Adam. It was cool. It's kind of psychedelic or rogue, kind of walking around like this. So maybe we'll do this more often, But I just want to, So I think we can keep brainstorming covers and do that stuff like later. I just want to say thank you for having us on and giving us a chance to say like what we're up to.
And I want to say sorry for the confusion at first. It's like I absolutely couldn't be here, and then I could be here, and it's my personal crap. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Completely understand. I don't know how you get home from work and write for 4 hours.
Well, I don't. Here's my problem. I can't write at home. I haven't been able to write at home for years now. Every blog post, everything you've seen of mine, it was all written in coffee shops. So what I do is I have 2 coffee shops now that I can go to, and let me tell you, like when you're a writer and you're trying to write every single day, trying to find the right coffee shops, it's like nearly impossible because there's things you have to take into account. What are their hours? Are the tables comfortable? Do they have, like, my laptop is so old that it won't keep a charge, so I have to know where there are power outlets where I can use. So all these factors have made it work. There's 2 coffee shops in town I can go to, and they're each like 20 minutes from my job. So depending on the day, I either head east or I head south, and I hit one of them, and then I'm there until close. So I usually get anywhere from 3 to 4 hours in, and then I go home and then repeat. But for me, it was just like, okay, so the main book I'm writing, it was kind of a project given to me by Zizek himself. I met him. Dave and I were at a Zizek conference, 2018, 19? When was it?
Man, it was either earlier 2008. I mean, I think it was like early. Yeah, I think it was early 2018, like in the spring.
It was, yeah. And so we go, and it was really cool. I won the award for like outstanding graduate essay. Of course, the funny thing is I haven't graduated from anywhere, but
yeah. There's a whole thing about it where the organizers came to me and were like, "Hey, we need to know about his what university he got his degree. Like, we're seeing that there's no official like thing in his information." I was like, "Yeah, that's because there is none. He just has a GED, man." Yeah, it was good. And then so he won the graduate essay, even though he wasn't a graduate.
Yeah, and so because I won, I actually got to have breakfast with Zizek, and we got to talk for a little bit. And I told him about this book idea, and he, yes, go do this. And so I've been working on it for 4 years now, and I really think this year into early next year it will really be done. But yeah, and so what keeps me going is just basically my hatred of capital and my passion for philosophy. It's a balance between love and hate.
I did not know that. I knew you met Zizek. You have pictures. They have pictures.
You didn't know I had breakfast with him?
I didn't know you went to breakfast with him. What?
Yep. Yeah, I had breakfast with him at the Holiday Inn.
What did Zizek have for breakfast?
Normal. He had eggs and normal stuff. And I will tell you this. Okay, so I have been able to develop a correspondence with Todd McGowan, and so I talk to Todd a lot. And I had this funny story about meeting Slav. First off, he hates being called Zizek. Everybody kind of knows this now. So, okay, I'm going to call him Slavoy, but it's not because it's some parasocial thing where I think I'm his best friend. He really hates being called Zizek. So, Slavoy, when I was with him, I was like, okay, you got to tell me, what's your favorite thing about visiting America? And he goes, I'll tell you. He goes, I love being able to go to the gas station. He's like, I can buy Spam and great meal for under $2. And I'm sitting there going, okay, is was he fucking with me? Like, does he like his favorite thing is getting to buy spam? That's the best thing America has to offer. But
At a gas station? What?
yeah,
This brilliant intellectual.
and so I was like, Todd, all right, you gotta tell me something. Like when I met Slavoj, I was like, I asked him his favorite thing about being in America, like what he loves to do most. And Todd already knew the second I said it, like, okay, here we go. I know where this is going. And I was like, he told me his favorite thing to do is being able to go to a gas station and buy spam. It's a great meal for under $2. I was like, was he fucking with me? And Todd starts laughing. He was like, no. He was like, no. He's like, every time I'm with Slavoj here, when he comes to Vermont to lecture, I'll ask him, like, Slavoj, let me take you to dinner. Where do you want to go? And every time Slavoj's like, here, pull over at Walgreens. So Todd stays in the car. Slavoj goes into Walgreens and he comes out with a bag. And Todd's like, what did you get? And he goes, Spam and Ben and Jerry's. He was like,
A man
Slavoj,
of taste.
I don't feel right dropping you off at your hotel room with nothing but Spam and Ben and Jerry's. He's like, no, trust me, I'll be fine for the night.
Oh my
So-
gosh.
That's his American
Oh my
jouissance he
God.
gets every time he comes here. That's his own red, white, and blue jouissance.
Adam,
that-
you showed that meme on the screen. Do you have or that was just a picture. Do you have the one where it's like, I took it, where Michael's standing beside Slavoj and Slavoj's like glowering super hard and Michael's like cheesing way too big, and we memed it to where it says something. Do you have that one in your stash?
I don't know if
Okay.
I've seen it.
Oh no.
So this
I
was
don't
a-
even know if I
This was a joke I played on myself, and Dave helped me play it. So I had this idea of, like, wouldn't it be hilarious to take a photo, if I could get a photo of me standing there looking all happy, and Zizek is staring off, not paying me any attention. And I was like, the meme would need to be the photo, and then it would just need to say, when you get to meet your hero, but he would prefer not to.
Yeah. And it's perfect. It worked out. He pitched me this idea like 2 days before it happened, and then it worked out perfectly.
I have
Oh,
such
that's great.
I have such a silly little look on my face.
I bet.
No, I don't know. I don't have it. I'm sorry.
Next time.
Um,
We'll get it next time.
Next time.
We'll get it to
next
you.
time.
But so Adam, I just want to say, so I've thought about it. Like, I love the cover. The changes that would need to be made, at least right now, are all changes that you can't make yet, because whatever the real blurbs are going to be, I don't have them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like I'm sitting here going, I don't really think anything drastic would need to be changed, and we don't have the blurbs, and so that's kind of it for now, I guess.
Sure. And as things move forward and we're actually ready, we'll, obviously be in more conversation about that. But I wanted to
Okay.
get people excited about this. I want
Well,
them to
I
know that
appreciate
it's
it.
coming. Yeah.
Well, from a you're an artist, and you love concepts and thinking about systems of concepts or their destruction, and I love that about you and this channel and everything that you're doing. But I thought, just an opportunity, not just to talk about us and the things we care about. That shit's fun, obviously, but I just from an artist standpoint, I don't know, like you make art for people, and there's a whole experience there, and like reasons that you enjoy it, and reasons that other people benefit from it, and we can have theories about all that stuff. But I'll just tell you that, like, it's life-changing to hold a book in your hands that you've written, and for the cover to be something that is of quality, and that I think that like, because I got to hear Michael's voice when he was talking about it when it initially happened. I forgot we'd sent it to him, and here he is
Mhm.
talking about it. It's just like, oh yeah, that's why we're doing this, is because, like, he's already written books and books worth, but it's blog posts and people just don't care about it the same way. And the thing is he was saying earlier, maybe he's, this is the fetishizing of the object or whatever, but I'd say, like, I've been reading a lot of Byung-Chul Han, and Byung-Chul Han talks about how the information age washes away our objects that give us a sense of continuity and durability in the world, and that instead of continuity and durability, it just all becomes pure contingency. And that's what the information age and data does, as it washes away objects from our world. And that books are objects, and that they're not just commodities. They're also, especially when we're not just thinking about mass production, it's just a little underground press. It's just like, this is passion objectified. This is objectified passion and work. So, but it's just not the same with like one of these formulaic covers, and that what you're doing is empowering and it's important. And I really appreciate you as an artist and a visionary. So thank you.
Seriously, like, I can't tell you, getting those two books, it was, you're surrounded by objects and commodities every day, but those two books, like, so thank you to all three of you. They're like symbolic gifts, like, for real, like the way that Moss talks about it, or Baudrillard, like, they're singularities. They're objects. Now, of course, like, could we print more copies? Yes. But to me, like, if somebody had a stack of them, it's like, no, these two originals, they're left to the side because they embody like this singular gift, and they're irreplaceable to me. So I just can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Excellent. Oh, that makes me happy.
That's good.
In the last live stream I did, which I don't do a whole lot, though I might start doing more of them like this, just relax talking to people. I was answering interview questions because I have also joined the editorial board for the quarterly print Locust Review, which is like a critical or realist art newspaper print. And they do wonderful stuff. I'm really happy to be on that team with them. But we were answering questions for a newspaper interview. And in that process, it dawned on me, and I thought it was a completely original idea, but it sounds like maybe Byung-Chul Han also is touching on this, which that it is through the proliferation of digital media that physical objects, physical art especially, has kind of regained some of the aura that was lost through print media, and that's the Walter Benjamin idea of how print has positives and negatives, but one of the negatives is that it loses its aura, its specialness. And especially, I think, right before everything was digital, it was like, whatever, book, I got a DVD, doesn't matter. I got burned CDs, doesn't matter. But now that we're in the age where you can get any article, any book, any movie, streaming or on some kind of cloud, having a physical book, a physical copy, maybe it's fetishism, but it also, I don't know, it's something a lot more special. It really says something, I think, about the person and their relationship to the ideas that are held within it. Reading a book is much different than reading a PDF. I will always stand by that.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I mean, this is why I think McLuhan is also as relevant as ever, right? With the medium is the message, where the very form through which you're getting information affects the content itself. And so, for example, like what's the difference between reading a book and reading a PDF? Well, if you're reading a PDF, you're reading it on a laptop or your phone. Those mediums immediately connect you to social media. You're getting notifications. You can look at YouTube videos. You can look at Wikipedia. There's always like such expansive ways for you to connect what you're reading to other things that you have immediate access to. And that can be great in certain ways, but there's also something lost in just being isolated with a text and that's all you've got. And that's what the book does, is the book, in a sense, makes you have to isolate yourself from the rest of the world. There's something individualizing. And in this sense, I don't mean like in like the way we talk about like bourgeois individualism, like in a good sense, in like it's you in the text, and it's your imagination and your own forms of questioning that you're engaging with in the isolation of just having the book in front of you. And so I think in some ways, like at the same time, if I never had my laptop when I'm writing or whatever, I'd be lost. So this is where you see like having different forms of media at your disposal is very beneficial. And it's like, the problem is that there's like a hierarchy of media forms where one becomes dominant and that's what everybody does, and all the other ones become obsolete. And this is why one of the blog posts I wrote, which is a personal favorite of mine, is basically a defense of talking on the phone. Like I really, really champion phone conversations. And, you know, I use Levinas and McLuhan basically to argue why I think that's the case. And I think that all of these various media forms have something incredibly singular and important about them, and something's lost if we just consider some of them obsolete. Like it's great to have as many at our disposal as we can.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Because I 100% like writing stuff on a computer much more than I do with pen and paper. And I much prefer, even though I'm opening up and I'm learning to appreciate digital art, and I've been doing it for a few years now, but I still prefer to draw with a pen.
Yeah.
Well, and I would just throw in there that, you know, this Anne kind of gave away the fact that this publishing company was kind of just thrown together, which is totally true, and it's part of our origin. I just wanted to say though that, like, I mean, because my initial justification to myself when I was like, should I have a company to do this with? I don't want people to think that I made a publishing company just so I can say I'm not self-published or something, because that's not what it's about. I'm obviously self-published, and it's my own company. It doesn't mean anything in that sense. It's about initially the justification was, at a bare minimum, it's a legal tax hole, or it's a tax loophole and a legal shield in case anybody wants to sue me for any reasons. And so, you know, that was about as much thought as I'd put into it. You know, it's cost $50 to start an LLC, so it's not a big deal. But as soon as you give something a name and a logo, it has a power. And as soon as I realized how to publish things, and I knew that I could do it for other people, it was instantly like, oh, well, shit, I'm going to fucking make Mikey some books right now, and let's do this. But then tying this all back into what you were saying about digital media as opposed to these more analog forms of media, you bashed PDFs, kinda. I mean, I think that what you said is objectively true. It's objectively true. So, you know, digital media should be bashed, but at the exact same time, we live in this world, and we don't have time, energy, so we just gotta fucking make do. And part of that's been me just being like, okay, well, a digital media is good enough for a first pass, and I don't need to understand everything in a first pass. And the reason I set this all up by talking about the publishing is because yesterday I listened to 65 pages of Encyclopedia Britannica talking about the history of book publishing. Just because, you know, I have this feeling of like, well, shit, I need to know what I'm talking about. And I could just say that, like, the history of book publishing is fascinating. I mean, you got to think, for thousands of years, if a text survived, it was because some people thought it was worth keeping it alive enough to write it over and over and over and over again by hand. And the written word is arguably like one of the most powerful things humans have discovered, and it's not less so in the age of information. It's just less taken advantage of. And the information overload and the ease of access works as a reverse form of propaganda. This book called This is not propaganda, argues that whereas in a direct repressive society that says you're not allowed to read this, you're not allowed to read that, you're not allowed to read this, and you say, China, you're not allowed to go on Facebook, whatever, which is probably a good thing, at the end of the day. You in our society, it's just like, no, you get to have everything, but it's too much, and you have no idea how to wade through it all, and so it's like information overload. And the one of the craziest things about that is that for the entire history of the written word was always gatekept by a priest class or caste. And this is why the term PMC means something to me, is because I think that there's something to the idea that for all of human history, so long as there has been a written word, there has been a group of people who serve the rulers of, who serve the people who hold power. There's a group of people who use words to control other people, to manipulate other people, and they use their, you can have like the literalist doctrinaire versions, like the Pharisees and Sadducees who killed Jesus, right? And what were they doing? They were gatekeeping and trying to control how people understood and interpreted the written word that they weren't even literate enough to understand on their own. And so that seizing the means of like our own world, to me, like the first piece of that puzzle has to come from like somehow we say, no, motherfucker, we don't need you and we can do this. And so like what I see right now on the left and the right, the cultural left and the cultural right, the Democratic and Republican parties as well, is a push to censor in different ways. And they're both in an arms race to censor us in different ways. That's what the whole CRT thing is about. But there's also other forms of censorship that are occurring. And it's creepy because the people who are in a class position that stand to benefit from it are the exact same people who do this privilege shaming bullshit. And so these people who want to like control what you read, how you read, these are the exact same people who, if you say, oh, I'm getting into this thing, they'll be like, oh, you shouldn't read that. Oh, you should read this instead. And so there's like this weird like pressure that people put on you to try to talk you out of things that you're interested in. And I don't know, just to bring it all back around together, is just like the history of printing, of the published word has always been a struggle that involves a group of people saying, no, you shouldn't do that. And here's what that really means. And we'll tell you what you need to know. Now go back to work. And that's what we're fundamentally against. And that, if it wasn't for like PDF and text, robot reader apps, I wouldn't know what I just said. And I learned that I didn't learn everything that I listened to. I was 65 pages, and I probably have like a couple of pieces that stuck with me. But the fact that I was doing that while driving, I was able to now say conclusively, yeah, no, there's been a power struggle for as long as there's been a written word. And there's a bunch of assholes who think they're the gatekeepers of knowledge. So fuck them.
Oh,
free Mikey.
Yeah. And so you're right. I did shit on PDFs, but I agree with everything you just said. And I would rather have PDFs than not have them. I would rather read,
totally.
A physical book. And likewise, I listen to things too. Obviously, podcasts, but audiobooks and more educational stuff as well. It all helps. And some of it is just personal preference. I think we are going to get out of here though, unless anyone has some stuff they want to say before we exit out.
All I'll say is what I love about the idea of this self-publishing, what Dave's publishing, but this form of publishing is that, I've talked to so many people who have actually published books. And I mean, Todd, for example, Todd has told me, like, from the day he gives them the final version of a book to the day it's released, it's usually a year and a half, sometimes 2 years. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not doing this. Like, how is this still a thing that it takes 2 years to get basically a PDF turned into a physical book. This is crazy to me. And so
Yeah.
I don't have that much patience. And I know that there's certain leftist publishers who, okay, they can do it in 6 months or 9 months. I don't have the patience for that. Like, I love this idea of whether we call ourselves working class artists and philosophers or whatever. I just love the idea of being able to be freed from this publishing machine that, works at a snail's pace and wants to edit everything. No. We write what we want, just like, and again, I know maybe it's arrogant but Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, they wrote what they wanted. The books were exactly how they wanted them, and they had control over the covers. They had control over all of it, and that's what I want. So that's what I'm excited about with this form of publishing. And like I say, I absolutely love the cover you did. And if I had a publisher, they don't care if I like that cover. No. But I want Zizek in the worker's vest and But no, we don't think that's the best for marketing. Well, I don't care. And so this way, it's total creative control, and that's what I love about it.
We're cool publishers.
No, that is very true. Very true.
I do end up being like, oh, for marketing reasons, this or that or the other thing. But most of the time, I tell that part of myself to fuck off. I just have to say, because it is stupid.
Adam, the one thing, okay, I do want the subtitle on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
I should have said that. I made a note. I just want the subtitle is how jouissance factors into wage labor.
Absolutely. And I actually realized just now that this is not the actual cover. This was an earlier version I made where I was like, oh, wait, I'm working on the wrong aspect ratio. But it's very similar.
Okay.
But yeah, we definitely will add the subtitle there.
You need that, and we need the little.
Oh, yeah, I forgot the little Z's over
name.
the two Z's. The little V's over.
That I will have to figure out how to do.
Okay.
But I'm sure it can be done.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You just like paste it from
a
word processing program or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool. I don't know if Plebe has talked to you about this at all, but publishing through Amazon KDP is cool because they give you like templates to plug the text in, and then once you have your page number and the size of your book, like what your dimensions are going to be, it gives you this template to put your cover on. So that's probably something we can share with you, so you can make the cover and then the little like spine just be the like exact perfect dimensions that it needs to be. Because when we sent these to Michael, we were like, oh, we didn't realize that like this needed to be done after the fact. So we added some borders, and it looks fine, but it'll be cool to have that consistency.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because I'm actually planning on doing a poetry book through Amazon after looking at a bunch of different options, and I hate to do it, but it also seems like the best one. You know, it just does.
I know. We're gonna get canceled for using Amazon eventually. It's a matter of time, but I plan on getting out ahead of those people by being like, I'm gonna actually probably publish a thing on our Substack, if not a book itself, about why this is actually important and we should do it. Because the problem isn't Amazon. The problem is that we haven't seized Amazon.
Right. Yeah, their publishing should be. Like, publishing should be available to people like that, And the other ways of self-publishing are like little vanity press things, which really just you pay a crazy amount of money for what seems like what you get out of it. And there's no way it's going to go anywhere, unless you become like viral or something like that and you're able to push it. This is very unrealistic.
Yeah.
Well, thank y'all so much. I enjoyed the conversation and catching up.
Me too.
Thank you so
And I'm
much.
excited to see the future of New Symbolization publishing and all of the work that comes out of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night. I'm back. Didn't expect that, did you? I'm gonna do a real quick poem for you. I got How We Became Posthuman by Catherine Hales. Do a poetry picnic. Quick one. Schizoid android with her intense emotional significance illustrating psychological dark-haired girls or fake humans' interpretations of respecting positions. Such rhetoric never observes an article's content. Researchers said that they had been so thoroughly unveiled, perhaps an apparatus of war provided them with the Time Warner Company recognition of disembodied abstractions. Better yet, a mechanical approach between purposeful and unnecessary. No accident clung to the more. Humans as subjects, unconscious motivations, a device sought methodological childhood net gainings, oversimplifications, dawning connections, no transmission, messages, perspectives, specific forms constituting what begins to appreciate the general materiality of patterns, technologies of books, informatics, high-speed shifting across randomness caused meaning to convey a visible mark that testified embodied creatures becoming traditions, abstracting information, cultural perception, wires, though it does mean I begin a self-organization growing out of an attempt to incorporate some theorist. That sounds good to me. I always slur. It's really hard to properly do that. Thank y'all so much. Like I said, be on the lookout for New Symbolization publishing. They're going to put out some really, really good stuff. I've been, had the previews of some of the things they're working on. And get Theory Plebes' book, because it is also wonderful. And I think I'm going to have them back on the podcast, in a more structured form to actually delve into those ideas of time, energy, and the other stuff in their Waypoint book a little bit deeper and more focused. But I have absolutely appreciated everyone coming by. Psychological dark-haired girls. I mean, sometimes that happens, Zoe Deschanel and stuff. Peace.